First of all, thank you very much for
You're welcome.
today.
What's your name?
Peter. Sorry, trying to tell everybody. First time here, a friend of mine. Hear me, everybody? Is that better?
Very good.
There we go. I'll stand up for like a good. So, you spoke about in the beginning about your mother and how heavy her influence and pretty strict religious. And I wondered if you could speak to dealing with family members. That's something I'm interested in, and maybe it was easier for you because you were not a young man dealing with it with a mother with this, but for younger people, that comes up a lot when I talk to them. It comes up for me too, having to deal with a mother, a father, a parent, spouse, even friends, but especially your family. Keeping quiet about it or, trying to engage with it, and it's very difficult. So
yeah, it is. Thank you for that. What do you do with family members who may still be very deeply religious? I don't think there's a right answer to that. I think everybody deals with it a little bit differently. My mom died right around the time when I was going through my quest. And so she really never knew. And I don't know how I would have handled that if she was still alive today. I still would have gone public on Facebook, so she would have found out in that way. I would not have wanted to talk to her about it. Just because I don't think there was anything, anywhere we could have connected. She was here and I was here, and we didn't have anything in common to really form a conversation about. And in a sense, she wasn't in a place where she wanted to have a conversation about it. She knew what was true already. She wasn't really open to the idea of, well, let's look at what you found out. She just had a simple, strong faith from the day she was born. So I don't think there would have been any constructive dialogue, let's put it that way. I do feel bad about my dad. Again, I describe my dad as a kind of a simple man, and I don't mean that in a negative way. He just doesn't get bogged down with lots of deep questions about anything. And in that sense, we don't really have a lot to connect on either, but I know it breaks his heart. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of people don't want to come out because they know somebody's going to be really sad and broken up by it. The only simple advice I could give would be, if you are going to approach somebody one-on-one, just say, look, I have something to tell you, and I know it's going to make you very sad. And I apologize for that in advance. But this is what the deal is. I don't think there's any, when you're telling people for the first time, I don't think there's any value in trying to convince them or persuade them or argue with them or give them all the evidence or whatever. They just need to psychologically adjust to the information that you're giving to them. It's a big deal for them, usually. So I know that people have done it all different ways. I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that I did it on Facebook all at once. People had given me advice to say, just come out gradually on Facebook, make little hints here and there. But how do you do that? How do you say things that just make people wonder maybe you were questioning your faith? I don't know. I just couldn't find a way to do that real subtly. It's just is what it is. That's a good question. Thank you. Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment on your question. As a free thinker for more than a couple of decades, my approach evolved. It started out as combative, and I realized that's not the way to go. Okay, getting into arguments and fights and yelling and screaming at people that you're right and they're wrong, it doesn't work. You got to figure out a way to show empathy for them, and then you'll gain empathy from them. So try that out.
Who's next?
Hello, my name is Marcus. I also want to thank you.
Marcus?
I thoroughly enjoyed your speech.
Thank you.
Found it very relatable in the sense that I kind of grew up Christian, and one of my biggest struggles was,
Sorry, I gotta get used to that. Was dealing with homosexuality and reconciling that with religion. And it was very, very difficult. And I never was diagnosed as depressed, but I struggled many, many years with thoughts of suicide. By the end of my faith, my prayers consist of, I wanted God to kill me. I was done. And so I could relate with you on that end. And I noticed that my journey or my quest also lasted about a year. And the more that, as difficult as it was to let God go, it was like simultaneously I got happier. And as soon as religion was just gone, I wasn't suicidal. I had a whole new meaning for life. And I was just kind of curious if that was kind of a similar experience for you. You didn't necessarily clarify if your depression ended. So, but I was just kind of curious. Was it a similar experience for you? Or,
Thank you. Good question. Did I get happy when I lost my faith? I suppose if I was a good evangelist, I would say, yeah, life became all roses and puppies. I would say it was traumatic for me, maybe. It was just so deeply entwined in me that it was kind of like pulling out my identity. And I kind of had to start from scratch again, figuring out who I was. I would say that I probably felt more of a sense of loss than of gain. I think some of the things I gained were certainly intellectual freedom. I didn't have to worry anymore about trying to fit whatever I was thinking into the right box. Certainly less guilt about stupid things. That wonder what God thinks about this, I wonder what He thinks about that, or maybe I shouldn't have done this, or am I fulfilling my His call on my life? All those kind of things. I don't have to, a lot less confusion trying to figure everything out. I've become to a place of acceptance about life and about things that I can understand and things that I don't understand yet. But I did lose. Frankly, one of the things that's been difficult for me to wrestle with is death. Christianity has a great story for death. Death is a good thing. When my Christian friends die, everyone celebrates. They're in a better place. So coming to accept the reality of death and what that really means is difficult for me. I have to wrestle with that. It's not a pretty story. Some people don't seem to have much issue with that, but it's been difficult for me. Certainly a sense of community has been lost. I think when you're a Christian, especially an evangelical Christian, you're automatically part of the club. You can go anywhere around the world, and if you meet fellow Christians, you're just immediately brothers and sisters. It's like a fraternity that is huge. And we don't have that so much. We have this, which is a little bit kind of like that. It's trying to be that, but it's a lot smaller than the Christian piece. I want to say something about homosexuality too. There are people who certainly have tried to reconcile what the Bible says about homosexuality with their life, and I'm not claiming to have come up with the correct answer about what the Bible teaches. I just told you tonight what my brief reading of the New Testament seemed to say to me simply. I know there's people that have gone much more in depth into the Old Testament, the New Testament, and have figured out ways to make it compatible with Christianity. I'm not taking a stance on that in particular. It was just one of the things I came across. Thanks for your question.
Hello. Wow. Thank you for coming here and speaking for everybody. My name is Jason Jewell.
Jason? Hi, Jason.
Yes. Me and my family moved here to Jacksonville about 4 years ago, and I've got a 5-year-old son that I recently put into school here. And, an awkward event occurred, and since my family kind of disowned me, now I'm not a Christian. I was kicked out of the church and things. So I'm kind of new to this secular world here. So my son gets home, and we eat together as a family, and he puts his hands together, and he bows his head at 5 years old, and he says a prayer. And me and the wife didn't, teach him this. I'm curious as to what you would do in this situation. We were going over ideas of putting, a secular shirt on him. I mean, is he too young for this at 5? I mean, what would you do? Thank you.
Oh, I wish I had all the answers. I didn't really have to go through any of that when my children were young. Lived in Massachusetts, and we were in a stage of non-religiousness at that time, and Massachusetts was pretty secular, so we probably were more on the in group at that time. So I don't have a lot of personal experience to go on, but just like my mom would make us wear orange on St. Patrick's Day to school, or write us notes to excuse us from dancing, square dancing. I think it's wrong to make your kids go through uncomfortable experiences because of your faith or your lack of faith. In other words, I think you've got to really keep your attention on the child and what's best for them, and not be so concerned about whether it matches your particular faith or not. I know there's new books that have come out recently for how to parent children in a secular way and how to explain religion to them. I haven't read those books. There's good reviews on them. I don't have any names in my head or anything like that, but it is an issue. It is an issue for some parents like yourself, and I just say you got to be really careful with your kids, not to use I guess what I'm saying is not to use them as pawns in the battle you're having between Christianity and not Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Thank you.
I'd like to add something, and that is, there's an organization in Madison, Wisconsin called the Freedom From Religion Foundation, and you can go on the internet and just Google Freedom From Religion Foundation. And there's a lot of support groups within that organization, a lot of good people there that might be able to help you out with your problem. Okay. I'm going to go to the back and have a questioner back here.
My name is Bill Wade. Hello. Okay.
Hello.
My name is Bill Wade. And regarding your question there, I had a somewhat similar experience many years ago with our kids. Not as extreme perhaps as yours, but we had kids that lived across the street and next door were Methodist in one case and Catholic in the other case. And we didn't go to church on Sunday, but they did, and they took their kids and had Sunday school. And so they wanted to go to Sunday school. So we looked up the Unitarians, which are a fairly neutral outfit that you might look into. And then there was another incident about the same time. We moved, and next door was a very fundamentalist Catholic family, and they read Bible stories to their children and read to our children as well, which is very nice, very neighborly, and so forth. And so what we did is we started reading Greek mythology to our kids and invited the kids next door, and our kids weren't invited over anymore. And those are a couple of techniques we get involved in, so I thought I'd pass that along to you.
Let me make a quick comment. Even though I didn't have to deal with this when my children were young, I will say that my two daughters went through a deconversion of their own right about the same time that I did. None of us had any influence on each other. It just happened to be we all went through it at all about the same time and didn't learn about it till like a year or two later when we got talking about things and we realized that we all had gone through a similar experience.
Julianne Thompson.
Hi, Joanne.
I just decided early on that I wasn't going to get involved in whether my children believe much or not believe much. And so now I have one that is a Christian and one isn't a Christian, is a non-believer. And I don't think you can make your children believe anything. You tell it what I said. Okay. This is the first time I talked into one of these things. I decided to stay out of my children's religion altogether. And they occasionally went to church with other people, and one is now a Christian and one isn't. And I can deal with it. I just feel like I let the one who is a Christian down, but but that was what we did.
I'm actually commenting on what, if you can make no comments, I don't want to put it in that discussion, but what you said, I'm a school teacher, so it made me think about this. And it's elementary school, obviously I can't sit there and proselytize atheism or religion or anything, and I would never do that, but what I can do and what we all do as free thinkers, hopefully, is helping people, kids especially, to think for themselves and give them those tools. So if they decide to become a Roman Catholic, they did that on their own. They didn't do that because, you know, I can influence them so much, but teaching them how to think and investigate and do that kind of thing. And the more information, they're probably going to come to the conclusion that it was probably all this faith stuff's not good for them. I mean, that's usually what happens. I mean, it's happened to me as an adult, so I'm sure it's happened to a lot of people.
Hi, I'm Diane, and that was a great talk. Thank you very much. And I just thought that was a great comment that Bill made back here about using Greek mythology. We don't need to be afraid of the Bible. It's literature. It's not the Word of God, but like Greek mythology, you can hear a lot of interesting stories, and there's a lot of cultural references that our children need to know about that's from the Bible and from Greek mythology. They're both important works of literature.
Where?
Hello, I'm Fred, a regular writer for our newsletter, and just one comment that when I was a child, about 9 years old, I came from an AV family. We moved all over the place. My mom's father was a Baptist minister, but he died when she was 11 years old, so I never even knew him, even though I was partially named after him. And but my parents weren't all that religious. They were vaguely religious when I was a child, and so we. They allowed me to learn it and think for myself. And so as a 9-year-old, I was reading Greek mythology, I was reading Darwin, I was reading the Bible, and to me the Bible just seemed, okay, this fits in with mythology. I just my mind was thinking, I was actually surprised when I learned that, no, people actually think this stuff is true. And actually of all places, when I was reading this is when my family happened to live in Salt Lake City. And I also learned about Mormonism. My family wasn't Mormon at all, but I did learn about it in school. I didn't really think that much about it until many years later. But that's just some of my experiences, and I was actually really surprised when someone tried to get me to go to I'm gonna go to a Baptist church when I was 17 years old. I said, okay, I'd give it a try because I hadn't really thought that much about religion before that. And I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen because there were people speaking in tongues and this and that, and was writing on the floor and this, which I thought that was completely crazy. He said, oh, Fred, you must have had a great time because you were smiling and everything. I said, yeah, because I thought it was so ridiculous. And that was what really started me to think about religion and what I believed, what I didn't believe. But it seems to me that my comments on this about how people stay with religion because of what they're taught and also the social constructs, and because many they may have doubts, but they're afraid to even voice them. Whether it's on the internet or one-on-one in person, so they just keep going on pretending to go along, even if they have serious doubts. I think most are afraid to even express those doubts. And so it seems like there are a lot more people that professing religion than maybe there really are, that, really deep down, maybe a lot more people who do have serious doubts, but they don't want to go through all the social repercussions of admitting their doubts.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You.
My name's Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
Hello. I remember being about a 12-year-old sitting in church, and I would, when it got kind of boring, I'd be reading the Bible. And at one point, I went, I do not want to be a part of this. I believe, like you said, the Old Testament God's an evil God, a monster, and I won't worship him. I won't, because that's what we're doing when we're saying we're involved with this. And so, as soon as I could, without disappointing my very wonderful father, in other words, when I went to college, I never went to church again. But this church here, this Unitarian Universalist, when you read about them, it says they believe in one God, but when you come here, if you come here, or the one in Arlington, they sponsored a goddess series, which was how I was introduced to them. Just talking about all the different goddesses. And they have pagan groups in here, lots of agnostics, lots of atheists, and a whole lot of people have been through a religious journey in their childhood, and it gives them, kind of like you said, this group is great, but it's once a month, and it's not real, well, it's somewhat socializing. But the other thing with your young child, they have a wonderful education program for youth, and they address these kind of questions, and it gives them a cohesion. Your kid doesn't have to feel he's totally alone. It's like, oh, well, in our house we do this, or we don't pray at the table in our house. You don't have to say it's bad, but say, we don't do that here. But I really wish I had known more about this Universalist, Unitarian concept, because my kids had this gap, that didn't, here you can say, okay, well, at my church, which is really, I think, why we changed our name to church instead of society or fellowship, or many other words, community, that the groups do, is partly because your kid will want to feel like they're belonging, and even though they're not belonging to the First Baptist Church, which may be a criteria for friendship, or the church you grew up in, it's still, you can say, oh yeah, I'm going to meet some of my church friends after church today. And suddenly they look at him like, oh, I guess you're okay. You're not too weird. Because that's what every kid tries not to be, is too weird.
Exactly.
Whatever that is.
Exactly. Girl.
Oh, while I'm working my way up here, as far as teaching children how to think, if you go online and type in logical fallacies, you'll get a lot of wonderful resources on learning all about logic and critical thinking.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Ryan.
Ryan. You mentioned a couple different things when you were examining your faith. One is like unanswered prayer. The other was like how the Bible was constructed and like the gaps in that. Is there one that you felt that was more of an influence or stronger than kind of progressing along that journey than the other?
Was there one?
Was it more spiritual, or was it more lack of evidence supporting your faith?
Fundamentally, it came down to intellectual, because people can have all kinds of religious experiences, but the fundamental question is, though, is it true? And you have to answer that intellectually. So, for me, my quest was largely intellectual, because I felt like that's the way you ultimately find out what's true. Because intellectual helps you analyze experiences, and it helps you analyze feelings, and it helps you analyze the whole broad spectrum of religion. It includes everything. What was the first thing you said?
That was basically it. Just that there was the evidence of, and then the lack of spiritual unanswered prayer.
Things
like that.
Well, spiritual, yeah, I guess you would say that there were several things that I mentioned that had to do with the fact that nothing happened when something was supposed to happen. Yeah, there was a lack of evidence, but again, that's lack of evidence. So I think the easiest way I would summarize it is Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And Christianity makes some very extraordinary claims, and I don't believe that there's anywhere near extraordinary evidence to support it. Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah, you're working me out, everybody.
Hi, my name's Bill.
Hi, Bill.
I've got a question about your purpose. And once you got this religion off your back, you got the monkey off your back, so to speak, why didn't you just go out dancing? Why are you becoming a missionary for atheism?
Well, everyone else in my family is a missionary. So I guess I have to be. No. Of course, everybody on Facebook plagues me with that. If you don't believe in God anymore, why do you talk about him all the time? To be honest, I really haven't. I went a couple of years without really saying anything to anybody, and I was fine. So this is not something that I'm doing out of a sense of compulsion or like it's working out some personal issue in me. It's just simply letting things happen. For example, I decided I wanted to find a group like this, the secular groups. So I think I found this group on Meetup, and I came to some meetings. And at Olive Garden one night, Carrie asked me, she found out that I had been a pastor. She said, "Oh, well, our people love to hear stories about people who were former pastors. Would you like to speak sometime?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be fine." Well, in the process of preparing for the speech, I ended up writing a lot and figured I might as well make a book out of this. So it's not like some big mission, I guess, on my part, but it's something that I'm happy to do, and I do think I can help some people. So again, I'm less interested in deconverting someone than I am just engaging people who are in that deconversion process and helping them to think through things, helping them to deal with their emotions. And that's just part of who I am as a counselor. So it's pretty casual, ultimately, for me. I could give it up today and it wouldn't be a big thing. But I do feel like I have something to offer. Thanks for the answer. All right, I think we need to close for tonight. Again, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your interest and your engagement.